Average Joe's Drive-In is proudly sponsored by the Maine Cannababes. The Cannababes are a charity group of pro-cannabis women in the state of Maine who are bringing worthy attention to various causes throughout the medical cannabis community. This year, they launched their very first Maine Cannababes pinup calendar. All the proceeds from this calendar are going to worthy charitable causes. If you are interested in purchasing one or finding out more about the Cannababes, you can go to their website, www.maincannababes.com, or find them on most major forms of social media like Facebook and Instagram. Please go and check out this group of wonderful people doing great things and helping out in the community. Once again, that's maincannababes.com.
Welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In,
Your weekly podcast of movies, music, games,
and other things entertainment related.
now your host,
DJ Washburn.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In. I am your host, TJ Washburn, and with me this week from the lovely state of Massachusetts is author Jeremy Flagg. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. How about yourself?
Not too bad, dealing with the first snowfalls of December 2017, and getting ready for a whole bunch more snow coming our way in the next few days, and feeling like winter.
I am not looking forward to it. I've already seen enough snow. I could be good for summer already.
I like snow for about a month, and then I'm like, okay, I've had enough. After Christmas, it can go away as far as I'm concerned. But I like ice because I like to ice fish. But cold weather doesn't bother me. But I am not a big fan of snow. So
I can handle the cold to a certain point, and then after that, it gets so dreary that you literally feel the weight of the snow on you, and you're just kind of like, I want it over.
That's. I think in New England, I can't remember who the hell it was. There was a comedian that was talking about, might have been Lewis Black, was talking about, if you live in New England, it's just gray. It's not really light. It's gray.
And the worst part is, I was hanging out with some friends on Saturday, and the snow's coming down, and everyone's saying, oh, are you sure you want to go out? And I look outside, and there's barely a white dusting, and I'm thinking, you know this isn't the snowpocalypse, right?
No, we had that last year when we got the 3 or 4 feet in one snow. That was for up here. That was a lot in one shot. I haven't seen that much snow, and not just because of the snow, but then the blowing of the snow and filling everything in. But I'm good to go. I have a snowblower this year for the first time in 7 years, so I'm being an adult and being very excited about that and not having to shovel this year, or very little shoveling. So
I remember growing up in the Junction, and there was a year we went trick-or-treating with our jackets because it was snowing so bad. So yeah. I think I'm okay with the snow in December. I can handle it. I'll suck it up. I'll be a big boy. I can do it.
If we can deal with snow just December, January, and February, 3 months, I'm okay with that. It's those prolonged winters like last year where we had snow from October until May. So.
And then the mud. And then much mud.
And then 3 months of mud, and then sort of summer, and then back to winter. But so why don't you tell everybody, a little bit about yourself and some of the stuff, what you do, because you're a man of many talents. You got a lot going
on. So I've been writing novels for about. I just realized it's 10 years now.
Nice.
And
congratulations. That's a good milestone.
I know.
Man.
That's it seems like forever ago that I started this, and so I just released I don't even know what book I'm on anymore. I have 3 books out in a trilogy and a young adult trilogy, and then I have 3 current books out in sci-fi superhero with 2 more on the way, and half a dozen anthologies of sci-fi and horror. So I jump all over the place when it comes to genre. It's kind of whatever makes my fancy at the time. But right now I have some superhero fans that are getting a little bit annoyed that I'm taking as long as I am getting the next book out. So that's priority 1. I won't tell them it's actually priority 2. I'm working on some zombies short stories right now, but no one is ever going to find out about that.
That comes back to the zombie love from your first series of Suburban Zombie High.
So that's the best part. These are the Suburban Zombie High short stories. I'm preparing to take the original trilogy, Zombie High, the reunion, and Final Class, and I'm going to put them into a box set and offer that up at the end of January. And because people are interested in this, I decided I intentionally left a couple loopholes in some plot holes that had never been answered. And finally, one of my fans contacted me and goes, "Really? You made this so obvious. When are you going to finally take care of it?" So it's been a while. So it's about time I finally give them what they were asking for. And whatever happened to all those missing characters? Well, now they'll find out.
Well, but that's kind of a cool way to go back and fill that stuff in and add some more to it. Like, I read the series and I absolutely love that series. It was a lot of fun, and I appreciate your kind of dark sense of humor with it.
So I've been teaching. It's funny that I write zombie books about the apocalypse for the last 10 years, and I've also been a teacher for the last 10 years. It kind of, which came first?
They're both very similar.
Very similar. And because when you're in the classroom and your students are being kind of snotty, and the worst you can do is give them that teacher voice, I decided it was best to put them into a novel where they all become zombies, and it made stress management that much better.
I think, one of the quotes you see all the time is, "Don't piss me off or I'll put you in a book and kill you," or something,
Which is funny you should say that. In book 3, no spoilers, but book 3, my yearbook students I had 2 students who were awesome, and Joey Vasquez and Alexa Wilcox, shout out. They beta read my first book for me, and I told them, if you're willing to beta read it, I'll put you into the book. And they were in my yearbook class, and so there's a pretty extensively drawn out scene where the yearbook class is being overrun with zombies, just so I could work them into the book and give them the epic deaths they had been begging for. And so it's extremely over the top and extremely tragic, but it's whatever student apparently wants, so they got it.
Perks of having a teacher that is also a writer.
Well, it was weird. One of my students wrote a book report on me, and they get their summer reading list, and there's things like Mouse on there. There's The Hunger Games was on there. All these really well-known young adult books, and then one of my students sends me this interview questionnaire, and I answered it thinking, what the heck is it about? And she comes back and she asked her teacher if she could use my book for her summer reading book, and the teacher said yes. And so she had interviewed me, and I didn't realize it. And she sets the essay down on my desk, and it was the most bizarre thing to see the student that you were kind of mocking in the book loving it so much that they wrote an essay about it. And that is, no matter what happens with my fans and the rest of my life, that is a crowning achievement right there, to finally have a book report done on you.
That's one of those steps as a writer. It's like, I've made it. Somebody wrote a book report on me. That in your first really shitty review,
I got my first horrific review for that book too. So I can't lie. The book is written very much with teenagers in mind, especially the teenagers I observe. So there's some extremely sexist comments. There's racist comments. I mean, it's the stuff that you say when you're a young adult and you don't realize how dumb you sound until you're older.
When that little filter in your brain is not saying you probably shouldn't say that out loud. It's okay to think it because you're pissed, but don't say it out loud. and I dialed it up, like, to the point where it reads almost like a soap opera. And I had someone leave me a 1-star review, and I kid you not, she only said that she read like the first 6 pages of the book, and her review was over 8 pages long, basically calling me the biggest racist, the biggest sexist, the biggest homophobe, and she just went to town. And it got to the point where I'm reading this review and it's just going on, and all I wanted to respond to her was, I appreciate your comments, you just didn't get it. And of course you can't say anything, so you just kind of like back away slowly and share it with everyone, all the authors you know. And even my fans found it wicked funny because they were like, obviously she did not understand that you were joking about any of this stuff and thought you were trying to be serious. I am the least serious person in the world. I was going to say, in the brief time you and I have known each other, I was like, that's like one of the first impressions I got from you is your sense of humor. You have a sense of humor very, very akin to mine. So I was like, he gets it. He's got that type of sense of humor, and that's why I think I really enjoyed those books so much, is because I get that type of, it's over, it's extreme to the point of almost being a parody of itself, and I love that. And I love that. So, and I mean, if you think back to when you were in high school, like, no matter how great of a student you were or how great of a person you were, there's always stuff you look back and think, oh my God, I was so dumb. Oh, I just was thinking of that today. Not to get too sidetracked here, but have you been? And I usually don't get into shit like this at all on my show, but that whole thing with that kid that posted the bullying video, that Keaton Jones kid, have you watched that at all? Or I have it saved right now, and I was leery to watch it before school started today, and I started looking at it, and then the next comment was, apparently the mom is a horrible racist. And I was like, oh my God, like, she gets that her kid's being bullied, but she doesn't understand that she's the bully. So I'm kind of scared to watch it now and just think my anger level is going to go through the roof all over the place. Yeah, and I saw that part of it, but I mean, taking the family part of it out aside, because you can't pick your family, unfortunately. I mean, I love my don't get me wrong, I absolutely love my family. I'm not saying anything bad, but I'm looking at it from that kid's perspective of being somebody that grew up being bullied a lot as a kid, and I was the fat kid, so I got bullied a lot, but like, listening to that kid got me thinking about, there was times, man, where I was probably a dick to people and didn't even really realize it at the time, and now thinking back about it, going like, man, I was kind of an asshole to this person or that person, or just the way I might have spoken or whatever, just because I didn't have that developed brain going, dude, that's not cool, don't say that shit, sort of thing. Because that's how teenagers are. They speak before they think. And that's why, for this book in particular, I made sure the first main character that you meet is the overly artistic goth girl who no one understands her, and she uses it as a weapon. And then there's the Asian minority girl who is constantly stereotyped, and the kid who wears the black trench coat who everyone thinks is a crazy conspiracy shooter, and then of course you have to have
the popular cheerleaders, the really well-known jock. And, you know, thankfully the high school that we went to, I thought was always kind of, you know, the band geeks and the cheerleaders were one and the same. And like the cliques at our school were not really well defined. And so,
I think we had kind of a unique experience in that way compared to maybe a lot of people, because I was a bit of a jock because I played baseball, but I was also an art kid, and I also, you know, I was also fairly smart and did fairly well in school. So I had like friends in each clique, but a lot of those cliques overlap, so it never seemed really weird, you know.
Well, it was partly, I think, because the only thing that we had to do in the evening was drive the loop over and over and over again.
And park at the Napa parking lot and hang out and shoot the shit and then drive the loop some more.
Yeah, and, you know, we had nothing to do, so we might as well go do school activities in all our free time. So I think I was part of almost every club that the school... my senior year, was part of the math team, and I can barely turn on a calculator.
Unfortunately, like, I always wanted to do the theater stuff in school, and we had a really good theater teacher my freshman year, and unfortunately, some things happened, and he got accused of doing some inappropriate things with a younger female, and got fired. So we didn't have really a drama class at all for like 2 or 3 years until senior year. So
and then the new theater teacher was the woman who married her first cousin. So
yeah.
You know, yay, growing up in the middle of nowhere, Maine, where everything is a weird little story.
Oh, there's a lot of those little weird stories you can throw out. But I think in a good way, as writers, that's good for us because it gives us some weird insight to throw into books, and, you know.
Well, and so while I was writing this book, like, I'm at my first teaching job, and I didn't understand these cliques. Why don't the first generation Asians socialize with the band geeks? Why don't the theater... I never understood. Theater geeks and band geeks can't be one and the same. And matter of fact, they kind of have an arch nemesis type component to them. And I just didn't understand it. And so when it went into the book, like, because I had never seen it before, to me it already seemed very over exaggerated. And, you know, it's the thing that, like, Dawson Creek would have talked about, or Beverly Hills 90210 growing up. So seeing it in person for the first time, I was like, this doesn't make sense, so I'm going to write a book that kind of capitalizes on it, and let's blow it up way out of proportion. And, you know, nothing brings out your true self than the zombie apocalypse. So, I'm not sure I would want to be a survivor where my only colleagues were the star cheerleader and the star jock and the goth kid, but it definitely made for entertaining. And when I was rewriting it just recently, the last draft that went out, I still snickered at some of the stuff. So it still kind of had that, oh my God, this is the reality that we live in. So good times.
It is, exactly, and that's the thing. When I read those, that the whole way through I was smirking and laughing at the stuff, because I think the right audience getting that stuff really that really says something to them, as far as they observe the over the top, you know, overt stereotypes that you use. But that's part of the humor of it. That's part of what I enjoyed about it.
And I think everyone, no matter how far removed you are from your high school experience, even as a teacher, my experience is way different now. But you always remember those weird little stories from high school when you think, oh my God, you know, Susie was such a bitch, and I really hated this teacher, and I'm pretty convinced that teacher was an alcoholic. And so you can instantly connect to it on that front, and I think people who can look back and laugh at the situation are definitely the type of people that I want reading it, because if you can't find the humor in situations, then it's just going to fall flat. And I think one of my favorite genres, including in movies, and we'll still bring this up later, are those movies that mock themselves and mock the genre, because once it's been done to death, it's only natural that the next stage of evolution is going to be a parody of it. And I love parodies way too much.
Like, Spaceballs is one of my all-time favorite comedies.
I will even go out on a limb and say I think I like Spaceballs better than Star Wars.
I'm not going to go that far, but I will say I love. And I had a complete. Before we go back to the writing stuff, I had a total nerd moment the other day. Mel Brooks' official Instagram page liked one of my posts because I had posted that I was watching Spaceballs on VHS because I found a VHS copy of it. And I watched it, and I got a like, not thinking everything of it, and I went and looked at the page, and it's actually Mel Brooks' page that he uses. I'm like, holy crap. Just something a little weird, talking about Spaceballs, but, that was like one of those holy crap moments.
That's a step away from fame right there.
I'm close. I'm that close. It's almost the 6 degrees of separation through social media.
I would be all for that.
I'm like, it's Mel Brooks, man. The guy's made some of the like classic films, like parody films especially. That man is a genius at parody.
You have no idea how much my cousin made me watch Men in Tights growing up. I still remember all the music.
We are men in tights. Well, something will put you on your lights. Yeah, I haven't watched it forever, but Blanken kills me in that. The blind servant there that's reading the Playboy in Braille and the castle's gone. And
the whole thing, just humor in the middle and end. Which is funny because I originally picked up Max Brooks' Zombie Survival Guide, thinking that I thought he was going to have the same parody of it. And so I'm reading this book, and then I realize, like, it is so incredibly ultra serious that I didn't know if he was making fun of people or he was being serious. And so I kept reading, waiting for a punchline. And before I knew it, I was at the end of this book, and now I know every way possible to kill a zombie. I am so ready for this.
It's, I don't know if it's sad that I read that. It was going, I thought of that. I've also thought of this. Oh, I didn't think of that. That's good. I'll keep that in the back of my head. But that and World War Z are two of my absolute favorite books of like recent, in the last 10 years. Both of those books are so good.
I generally read before going to bed at night, and I get like 3 pages in and I fall asleep.
Me too.
And I remember World War Z. I was getting annoyed that the chapters were so long because I had to go to bed. One more page and I'll go to bed. One more page, and I finished the book in I think 2 days. And for me, that's astronomical.
Yeah.
But so good.
I do the same thing. Like I read. I generally try to do like a chapter a night when I read before bed. But then once in a while, you get those books that it's just like, holy crap! I can find out what. Okay, I can do one more. Okay, it's midnight. I need to get up in 4 hours. That sort of thing. Those are the books. Those are the books I love, and those are the books that really and honestly tend to stick with me more so than other books that I read over like the span of a few weeks.
So, and it was funny because in World War Z, I mean, every zombie writer has their contingency plan, well thought out. I keep a tent in my car. I'm ready to leave at any moment. And I always thought if zombies came out, we're going to go to the north because if we need to go someplace that humans can't survive, because then, zombie anatomy is still human anatomy, so we'll go somewhere cold and we can survive the cold. We're from Maine. We can handle the cold.
Oh, yeah.
And then And then there's the chapter about the RVs going up north to Canada, and oh my God, I was reading my own biography, and it got creepy.
Yeah, as a buddy of mine were actually just discussing this very thing Saturday night. We were hanging out. I was getting ready to head back. I went up to visit him, and we were talking. And shout out to my friend Pete. We were talking about, like different scenarios, not just the zombie apocalypse, but like if any like really like plague, any weird shit hit the fan, what we would do. Because of the areas we live in, we have advantages that a lot of other people don't. It unfortunately, like we were saying, I think cities would be the worst hit because of the dense population and, the compactedness of it. Maine is 97% forest.
and I can't, for the life of me, David Wellington did an online book. I don't quote me on it, but I think it's called Nation of the Dead or Planet of the Dead. And he did it as a serial online many years ago, and then it got picked up by a publisher. And the opening book takes place in Africa, and it's a young tribe of girls that are surviving, and they've done it by basically eradicating men because men don't work well together in a communal society, and they live in like the most uninhabitable areas of Africa, specifically because you want to live where people can't go. And he approached it in such a logical manner that I was shocked with just how matter of fact it was. And since then, I think the zombie books that I've grown more accustomed to, or just generally like more, are ones that take a really practical approach to it. Because, gone are the days of Dawn of the Dead and those over the top being able to survive in your small cluster of people. And so that's why in my books in particular, I made sure to dial down the scope of it, because when you really think about the zombie apocalypse, mankind would really survive. I mean, we could just outlive the rest of the people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, I contained mine. The first one takes place in a high school, and 2,000 kids in a high school is pretty jam-packed. And then the second one happens to be in a mall during the release of Twilight. And
I remember that, and I laughed so hard about the horde of tweens.
And, yeah, I actually wrote that at the mall that I wrote it about, and I was in the Starbucks, and just so many girls coming to get frappuccinos. I couldn't say no to that. And then the third one, I did the same thing, and it was the students contained in the school, and I realized really quickly that the newer generation has been brought up on zombie culture, and so very quickly the students have it figured out. They're winning the battle so quickly, and I realized, crap, my characters are going to defeat them before I can get to midway in the book. So then all the parents show up for parents' night, and now we have that same mass and just sheer numbers again. But my characters got smarter in 6 years. They watched way too much Walking Dead, apparently.
Now, a question. Being a writer and a teacher, has that ever got brought up to you at like a PTA conference or, parents' night?
So, when I originally released the book, I released the first book under a pseudonym because I had a department chair at the time who was so incredibly neurotic, and she was so incredibly oversensitive to anything that could be controversial. She reprimanded me because someone on my blog, 3 years before I became a teacher, and mind you, I'm a college student at a party school at this point, someone used the word masturbation in a comment. And it was such an offhand comment, and it was hyperbole. It was so obviously a joke. And she pulls me into her office and tells me to my face that if I don't get it deleted immediately, I'm fired.
Wow.
And so I originally released it as a pseudonym, and then I wound up leaving that job. Just, obviously I'm not the correct fit for that place.
Right.
And after that, I said, you know what? If that's the type of situation I'm going to find myself in, I don't want to work in that type of place. And so my new school, I don't think anyone would have a problem with it. I don't think anyone would think twice about it. I always make sure none of my characters ever kill other living characters. I'm very, very conscious about, the gun situation that comes up in my, no one ever assaults a student. No students assault teachers. Like, it's really the living versus zombies. And I did that very consciously, knowing that I might someday get myself in trouble. Right.
Yeah. That's why I was kind of curious of that whole situation and how that plays out, because it does take place in a school and you are a teacher, and that whole thing. But when I think back to Stephen King when he wrote Carrie, he was a janitor and a teacher at the time.
and yeah, so I think it was about a year ago, a teacher, the newspaper ran an article about a teacher who got fired because he wrote a story that took place in the future at the school he worked at. But in the future, it's like 100 years down the road, the largest school shooting in America happens at the school, and it's talking about how that has shaped the culture of the school. And it's kind of written from a slight sci-fi, literary point of view. And he got fired for it. And the article ran originally that he got fired for publishing this. And I'm thinking, wow, that's a huge union violation. It's a huge First Amendment violation. There's something we're not hearing about it. And weeks later, what happened was, come to find out, he was being really shady and starting to ask things like, can I move my classroom closer to one of the escape doors? And what are the rules revolving around this scenario? And would the school be prepared if something bad happened? And he started asking some obviously red flag questions, and the school said, we're not 100% sure about you anymore, and we need to let you go. But it looked like it had been based off the book, but the book, along with all these other red flags, showed a pattern. And so I watched that really closely because I was wicked nervous. But at the same time, I'm a pretty boring teacher overall. There's not much excitement that goes on. The students would probably say I'm as easygoing as it gets. So I try to maintain that reputation. That way, if someone does read the books, no red flags go off.
Right. Now, so I also want to ask you a little bit about the Children of Nostradamus series. Now, so I know you and I did a guest blog for you a while back about the whole about comics and how they played into my life and different things, and so what really kind of kicked you into gear on getting that series going?
So many years ago, in wonderful 7th grade, Nick Leonard and I worked together to make a comic book, and it was 100% at the time a ripoff of Marvel's X-Men and the Avengers, and we were mimicking what we knew, but we came up with some pretty interesting concepts. Like, there were aliens involved, and we came up with kind of unique situations for them, and at the time, I think we could have only ever gone so far with it because it was so derivative. And so years ago, I found all the scripts that I wrote and some of the artwork that Nick Leonard had drawn, and I realized, there are actual ideas here that could potentially work. And so I wrote the first draft, and it was it was horrible. It was trash, and I didn't think it was going to make the light of day. And then I realized, let's change the situation and focus in a little bit more on the people that have these abilities, and what realistic problems could they have that would need supers to do super stuff. And I started thinking about, what if somebody could see the future and how would that shape things? And so it slowly started to unravel this comic book that we had done, but there were so many little bits in this comic that I was able to steal, and all the characters that are in the novel are actual characters that were in Nick and I's original comic. And some of the plot had to be dropped. There's no aliens. There's no magic users, and the powers are really not as amazing as some of the people. I have one of the characters that you meet very, very early on with abilities. He has the ability to mimic sound, and that's it. Someone else, their ability is they're the color blue. And so, just because you're granted these abilities or these powers doesn't mean that you won the genetic lottery and got a good one.
But I also liked what you did with the fact that you made the superpowers are, like that sort of thing, but there's also a bit of a cost to having them. It's not just I have the ability to shoot lightning or project energy. There's like, I'm going to spoil this a little bit, but not give away too much. With your guy that has to be hooked up to the batteries in order to keep his power contained. And
so a lot of the powers I wound up coming from, I wanted to be able to explain some of them with pseudoscience. So one of the characters, she can superheat the air around her and create plasma. And so I did a lot of research in how plasma is created, and I know way too much about this now. And then the dude who can shoot electricity, I started trying to look at from a realistic point of view, because, there are plenty of superheroes that can shoot electricity out of their hands. And then I realized, why would it be your hands, and what would be the cost of this? And so I started looking at like how electric eels work and trying to find a little bit of a science explanation. And, I wanted it to be stories about humans making sacrifices. And I'm pretty brutal with my characters, and so none of them get away scot-free with their abilities. There's a guy who can process information at an uncanny speed, and he has Asperger's, which is a byproduct of having Asperger's is a lot of people have uncanny abilities with mathematics. And so I took some of the stuff that was already happening and dialed it up. And I wanted them to have shortcomings or vulnerabilities, because I hate Superman. I hate him so much. I hate Wolverine. I want him obliterated from the earth. I love the movie Logan, but I hate Wolverine. Because Wolverine has a nuke dropped on him in an episode, and he comes back from a single cell. Superman gets annihilated, and he can regenerate himself from nothing.
They're indestructible, more or less, even with, which I think you create a problem when you make a character have they have vulnerability to an extent, but not where it's there's no consequences for their actions, I guess is what I'm trying to say. No real, repercussions and consequences.
And we as mere mortals can't connect to that, because, that uncanny amount of ability, we can't fathom that. But I can fathom what it's like to have a disability where I have to get hooked up to a machine every day. That notion came, one of my friends on Facebook is going through dialysis right now, and it just made me think about, if you're constantly making this electrical charge in your body, what do you do when you're sleeping at night? Like, you're going to set your house on fire. And so, it posed some significant questions. And then, as simple as the dude wants to have sex. How the hell is that going to happen? And I'm not entirely sure how it happens yet. I kind of just, I skirt around that because I still blush when I try to write it. So not quite yet.
You're going to have an epiphany moment where you're going to be like, I know how to do this now.
Dude, all that keeps coming to my mind is something with jumper cables, and it will not end well.
That sounds like a very bad BDSM session, but,
and until I can get that out of my head, then apparently nothing's going to work. So, and then I also, even Professor Xavier has the ability to read minds. Well, what is the byproduct of that? And if you could listen to anyone thinking, I personally would go find the middle of nowhere so I could hear no one thinking.
I would go insane. I think I would go insane if I had to hear everybody's thoughts all the time.
And that's one of the things that I think needs to get addressed in all of these. One of the main character, the first character that you meet, has the ability to see the future, and so she tries to change the future. And we're finding a philosophical question of, if you change the future, was that future always meant to happen? And if so, are you actually changing the future, or are you just part of the process? And so, philosophical questions keep popping up all over the place, and people have to keep asking themselves, is this higher calling something that I want to succumb to, or am I making my own path? And I think that speaks a lot to people who question these things. And so, I question it all the time. And I think despite having superhuman abilities, these questions aren't going to go away. I think they're, if nothing, going to be magnified by the awesomeness of what you can do. And so I really wanted to emphasize that. And the second book was a lot of a reactionary response to some of that, and the third book is a bombshell gets dropped on everybody that really shakes their concept of self and what they're actually doing and what is good and what is bad. And so I think these are legit questions that we all have, and I don't think it changes with superpowers. And so, but yeah, all my people need to have some shortcoming. And even my Superman character, my magician, he has the ability to open portals in space. He can only do it so many times before he passes out. It's, you're tearing space-time, and there's limitations.
You make the characters very human. Even though they have these extraordinary abilities, people, I think, can still relate to their human faults and shortcomings as well. Which I think is why they work well.
I always have these really weird questions when it comes to superheroes, and oh my god, Jay and Silent Bob. Back in Mallrats, asked Stan Lee if Mr. Fantastic is really stretchy everywhere. and that's always stuck with me because, does Superman go to church on Sunday? Or, when Batman's taking a leak, is he, what is he thinking about? And, super people are still just people. And I think once you start to lose that, it just becomes another godly tale, and I don't think a reader can connect with that anymore. I think we want the human aspect of a superhero. Robert Downey Jr. is the perfect example. Iron Man sucks. no one has ever read Iron Man and gotten excited. And I'm sorry if you listen to this and you're like, no, Iron Man's the best.
I personally love Iron Man. That was one of my favorites growing up, but that's okay.
It's a story of a rich white dude. And that's literally his ability, is to be rich. And so I did not connect with that whatsoever. And
I definitely wasn't a rich kid growing up by any means, but it just, I don't know, there was something, just I think for me it was more like the technology aspects and him using his money to, kind of, and Batman to me really is the same way. You take away Batman's money, and what is Batman?
A white dude.
Exactly.
And it's become the problem, like the Arrow, rich white dude. Danny Rand from Iron Fist, rich white dude. Like, those are their abilities when they start out. So I really liked the bringing back kind of the human story. And I mean, this is one of the reasons why Watchmen is one of my all-time favorite graphic novels, because they don't even have abilities. You don't realize that till the end of the book, that they're not superhuman. They're just average humans that try to do the right thing. And the real story is about their human side. And so, yeah, I'll keep harping on it. Like, I want my superheroes to have those human qualities that I have, so I can pretend I'm them.
And something else too, and you brought up the whole, it's kind of a cliche in comics from, going way back as far as I can remember. It's 90% of it is a rich white dude or the extremely hot white woman. And that's something else that I really found interesting as kind of, from my perspective, is you wrote in a lot of diverseness in with your characters.
Now, don't get me wrong. I love me some Scarlett Johansson. However, the Avengers movies up to this point, if you even just look at the Avengers, it's white person, white person, white person, white person. And,
other than War Machine and Black Panther, really.
Well, and at this point, they're still only like tier 2 superheroes. They haven't kind of gotten there yet. And they will, and I'm sure Marvel thought about this in the grand scheme of society and how it would play into the profit, and I get that. I did not want to have that issue, and so my characters range from the gay artist to the nondescript Latin American military woman. I went out of my way to make sure that my Muslim female, she's very traditional. She wears a hijab, and I remember very consciously, originally I said that she had a scarf wrapped around her head, and I had to make a decision in that moment. Am I going to embrace diversity, or am I going to skirt around it for the majority? And I realized I'm defeating my whole point, and she's become one of my favorite characters because I do so much research for her, and I've learned so much more about Muslim culture, and I've learned so much about, Islamic faith, and I get a little bit scared writing about it because I'm not sure if I'm stereotyping or if I'm wrong. And so thankfully I have a friend's husband, April Wood, another well-known writer in the area. Her husband actually very closely lived the story of this girl, and so was able to really relate to it, and gave me pointers and told me where I was kind of going a little bit too far one way or the other. And I think that made my cast that much stronger. One of my main characters is a gargoyle, so if you're gonna have someone green with wings, let's try and really show the diversity that is Boston, Massachusetts, where the majority of it takes place.
Right. Now, so getting on to sliding into the movie thing, because we're killing time here like crazy, and like I said, it happens. This is the part. It's so easy to get wrapped up in what you're talking about. But going into the diversity thing, this is something that I'm really interested to see how Black Panther does. Because I think the trailer looks fantastic for that movie. That is gorgeous looking.
So I'm rooting for it in the same way I rooted for Wonder Woman. It's about time it happened. Not even the superhero aspect of it, just when you see the amazing, colorful costumes that are done for that movie, it was so visually stunning that I almost didn't care about the superhero aspect. I wanted to know more about the culture that fostered these people. And, I mean, that's a 2-minute trailer, and I've watched it quite a few times. I am thrilled for it to be happening. And my students and I just got into a fight over this. They're really excited, for Marvel's first black superhero on stage. And I said, no, you're wrong. 1998 was Marvel's first black superhero on stage. Blade. One of my all-time favorite movies. It makes it into my top 6.
Blade 2. See, I fall into the category of I like Blade 2 better than 1, but I love 1 too. You know what I mean? It's one of those, 2 is just slightly above for me, but I like them both. But yeah, Blade is such a great film.
I loved Blade. I liked Blade 2. It only lost a couple slots to the first one for me. And then even the third one, while it was a complete cluster and it did so many things wrong.
It has moments, though.
It has Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool in it.
I forgot all about that.
Ryan Reynolds and Parker Posey made that whole movie. The rest of it could have been thrown away. I mean, it was horrible.
And I've had a crush on Parker Posey for ages, because that's my kryptonite, is that kind of goth girl with the piercing eyes thing. Yeah.
She's just the right shade of crazy, and he is just the right shade of crazy, and it worked so well together. If you watch Blade 3 next to Deadpool, it will all make sense.
I have to rewatch it now because it's been a while since I've watched any of them, actually. But I just love the thing about part 2 that I loved was the fact that, the Daywalker and the vampires have to kind of team up together. They don't like each other, but there's the greater evil that they have to take care of. I'm a sucker for that classic scenario of 2 enemies having to work together for the common good of both of them. And then, once we're done kicking ass, maybe we'll go back to being enemies again. But for right now.
Funny you should say that. You'll have to read book 3 of my superheroes.
I have it. I have it, but I have not gotten a chance to read it.
There is definitely oh crap, I need the person I want to kill.
I think that's always great for a good moral conundrum of, that what would I do in that situation? And you're just but I hate this person so badly that that's a great thing about being a writer, though, is figuring out the moral quandaries that you would be faced in those situations.
And sometimes you just have to say, you know what? I'll kill you later. Let's go do this.
And and when movies address those correctly, I think it makes for a really cool story. So, but go ahead.
Well, no, I was just saying, and the best part about it is once you realize that Blade 3 was a Ryan Reynolds movie, then we go Blade to Ryan Reynolds and Green Lantern, which we all know was such an epic masterpiece. And then you get Blade, you get Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. He is the only actor to play 3 separate roles in superhero films. And
that's something I wasn't even thinking of, because I always forget. I know it, but it's one of those things I forget that Blade is a Marvel property. That was really the film that kicked off the whole Marvel superhero resurgence, because that was 98, 99?
That was 98, and then in 2000 we had X-Men, and that's when the actual superhero became a a common vernacular.
Right, because Blade is really kind of an anti-hero.
Yeah, which is why he was perfect for, you know, vampires were on the rise in popularity, and so he was the logical choice. And I don't even think he actually exists in the normal Marvel world anymore. I think he's part of like the Dark Knight imprint of Marvel now. I might be wrong. Someone can correct me on that.
I am so out of touch with like recent comic stuff that it's just I've gotten so out of it that I'm like terrified to even try to get back into it because there's so much out there right now, and there's so many different, you know, series of the same characters, and it's overwhelming as hell. Like, I pick up an occasional trade paperback or something for like characters I know, but outside of that, I'm like, I don't need another expensive hobby to get back into.
I haven't picked up a popular either a DC or a Marvel comic book in forever. I've been reading like smaller brands like Pete Sametti's The Chair from Alterna Comics was awesome, and I think there's so many better, smaller stories to be told that we no longer need the grandstanding of a 300-issue crossover that you can't possibly afford. Okay, I just can't do it anymore.
Right. Oh yeah, and that's the point I'm at. It's like if I hear really good things about something, like, you know, when it comes out in a trade, maybe I'll grab it for $15 or whatever and give it a shot. But outside of that, there's too many. Now, I wanted to talk to you about this, and we can kind of close the show out on it. We both just recently watched Close Encounters of the Third Kind for the first time, and I want to get your opinion on this.
Okay, so I've been doing a thing, me, my friend Paul, and his husband Chris have been watching. I made a list of all the sci-fi movies that my fans think I should watch, and they had some extravagant lists that movies I have never heard of, I didn't know were real, and I started going back and watching all of these, and you know, some of them, like, I had never seen 2010, and so it's referenced so much, I feel like I've seen it, but I finally decided to sit down and watch it. And then one of the movies that's been on my list that I kind of sort of remember something about music, and I couldn't remember anything else about it. Yeah, that drove me nuts, and that's all I could think about from it. And so it came up in the movie theater for its 40th year?
Yeah, I think it was this year, or last year was, well, this year was its 40th anniversary, so they did a big 40th anniversary, like, rescan and loaded it with extras. It's got, like, the director's cut, the extended cut, and the theatrical cut, but they did like a limited run in the theater too.
So we went on like a Tuesday night at 5 p.m. to go watch this movie, and it was on my list, so my fans suggested it, so let's check it out and see what's going on. And it was a fun viewing. I enjoyed it. The movie, oddly, I think, other than special effects, I think the story kept up fairly well. The remastering was really good because you couldn't see like the strings on things or the cutouts used to create like the stars and whatnot. So it definitely was way improved. And the version that I saw had a different ending that had like an extra 5 minutes of footage where you saw all the little aliens, and then you saw like the big, creepy, scary alien, and all of a sudden I'm watching this and I'm like, Jesus Christ, that shit's scary. Like, I can't imagine this being on like an afternoon TV when I saw it as a kid. And we walked out of the theater and I was like, dude, that went from cute, adorable little aliens to, God, what the hell am I seeing? Yeah. And then I found out it wasn't in the actual original theatrical release because people thought it was too scary.
See, the one I watched was the special edition. It's not the director's extended cut, but so I saw that scene was actually in that one. I thought that film was gorgeous. Really, I love the way they use the colors and stuff in it, and I thought that's one of the things that made it stand out so much to me. Is they used a lot of like bright, warm colors, which a lot of sci-fi you don't see that. It's usually very dark and bleak and kind of ominous, you know.
And so it kind of reminds me. Did you by chance see the new Blade Runner movie?
I have not, because I couldn't sit in a theater for like 4 hours.
Oh my god! I'm not gonna lie. It was pretty darn long. But the original Blade Runner, I thought what was so beautiful about it, other than one instance where their miniature looked very, very fake, by using miniatures instead of CGI, it created a certain tone. And then the new version, I thought they did a great job of recapturing that feeling to it. And that's one of the things I liked about Close Encounters was it didn't rely solely on this bajillion-dollar budget of special effects. Like, there was a good story to be had here. Sometimes confusing and I think very intentional, and sometimes heartwarming, sometimes a little, what's going on, like the military is out to do something bad. It's
kind of manic. It is, I think so anyway. I think it's kind of manic, but I think that's part of the charm of the film is that manicness, And the part about that movie that fascinated me the most, really, it wasn't even so much the aliens, but it was watching Richard Dreyfuss's transformation and like slow mental breakdown.
So, okay, here was my only problem. Dreyfuss was the main male lead, right? Okay, so he's doing his crazy crap, constructing the mud tower and slowly losing his mind and becoming consumed by whatever this thing is. And I was on board with that. My only thing was he gets in a little tiff with his wife and he's like, oh, you don't understand me. I'm going to run off and chase this thing. And then all of a sudden he goes, hey, pretty lady who's also crazy like me, you want to make out a little bit? Don't worry, my wife will never know about that.
It was a heat of the moment of the awe of the spaceship that made that happen. That's my theory that I'm going to go with. Apparently, alien spacecraft causes infidelity.
We're going to have to go. Well, then apparently America sees a lot of spaceships. That was my only problem. Is like I get it, like. They needed to create like a little bit of tension, and they just fell back on, hey, our male lead and our female lead kind of need a little chemistry, so let's make that happen. And I was like, I think this was a little unnecessary. Let's go back to the aliens. But otherwise, I thought it was awesome. 40 years later, a movie that can still have that kind of magical moment to it, especially when, I'm all special effects all over the place, and I love big budgets, and that movie was awesome.
The pacing was very, similar to Jaws, as far as, how the beats went, how it played out, at least I thought so anyway. And Jaws is, my favorite movie of all time. So, to see that kind of almost recreated, also a Spielberg film, so it was... But kind of in a different format. Instead of sharks, it's about aliens. And it's not quite as ominous, but it's...
Well, and even the aliens had really very little to do with the plot. They just were a catalyst for the series of events that followed. And so I'm watching way older films right now. I watched The Fly recently, and I rewatched Scanners.
The Vincent Price version or the David Cronenberg version?
Cronenberg. I don't think I could sit through the Price version.
Love the Price version. But I'm a ridiculously huge Vincent Price fan, though. So.
And so, what I liked about all these older movies is sometimes the best part of it is what they don't tell you, and you just get to walk away from it going, I have some questions.
The less is more approach.
And I think we get over delivered so much now that if it doesn't, reach that major multi-million-dollar climax, then, you walk out feeling unsatisfied. And I mean,
think it, and that's something that I don't know, as a writer, I kind of like to still go with that less is more approach and not overly explain things to the point of beating them over the head like a dead horse, type deal. But I think there's, depending on the genre, I think you can get away with it more so than other genres. I think some genres almost lend themselves to that, leaving it up to your imagination to fill in the blanks type thing.
So my first anthology piece that I ever got in was a horror piece about witches, and it's a sci-fi story with like a huge horror element to it.
Was that the one in Wicked Witches? Yes.
Yes.
The kind of the technomancer thing.
Yeah, and so do I have to explain that hackers and witches are basically the same thing? Not really. Do I have to explain where the demons come from? No, it's not really important. Do I have to explain how the magic system works? Just enough to keep you in the moment.
Unless you're writing 40 books in that series where you really need to flesh it out more, then...
Well, the short stories that I've been writing for this are kind of my dipping my toe into, do I want to write a bigger series of this post-apocalyptic, magical, fantastic...
I think it would be pretty cool, because I really enjoyed that story, so...
So I'm trying to lightly touch upon like Shadowrun from back in the day.
I am a Shadowrun, old school Shadowrun gamer from way back. So
I have this idea for a modern day fantasy with cyber elements to it. So it's percolating, and I've been using horror anthologies to kind of touch upon it. But because you only get, 20 pages to write the story, it's kind of a lesson of editing and learning what don't you put in. And so I think, working on short pieces have made my long pieces better. And almost kind of now when I write a longer piece, I feel a little bit spoiled of, does the scene need to go in there? Maybe not, but I can, so I will.
Right. I think it, I'm kind of in the same boat right now where I've been banging out a lot of short stories. I have 4 or 5, and I've got one that I'm finishing up right now. They're not edited yet because I kind of like to leave my work for a little bit before I edit them, so I can kind of see them with, so you can see them with fresh eyes. Because I've found over making the mistake of going right back after I've written it and missing a lot of obvious things, so. But it's kind of the same idea. I'm kind of going outside my comfort zone of I'm a horror guy. I mainly write horror, but I like sci-fi. I like action stuff. I like comic stuff. So I'm trying to, and I like even westerns to it, so I'm trying to try some of this other stuff to see maybe I want to try writing a book in that genre, just and how I'm feeling about it. And it's really interesting. It's very cathartic in a lot of ways to do that.
Well, and so many people now preach the stick to your genre, and I think fuck that. I mean, I hate westerns. I hate them so much I can't even begin to explain it. I don't know why. My whole family loves them.
That could be why you got stuck watching Gunsmoke too many Sundays with Grandpa. And
my dad still watches it. So, but Westworld was one of the best TV shows I've ever seen because it made me love a genre that I have sworn off. And then even
I still need to finish it up. I have 3 episodes left, and I got to I think episode 6, and that was the last one I watched. So I have to finish the last part of it up. But it was awesome from what I saw of it.
The last episode will make you mad that you can't have more episodes right now. It was so great. And then there's even movies like and it wasn't a huge success. The graphic novel was awesome, but Cowboys and Aliens.
I love Cowboys and Aliens.
someone took a really random concept and merged them together and came up with this great thing. So I think short stories where you get to experiment outside your genre, like there are, I really need to make this sex scene work because it's literally built to this moment, and I'm just like, I'm gonna deal with it. And so I sat down and I read a couple romance stories, and I was like, okay, well, I know what I don't want to do now.
I want to do the red flag Harlequin romance, just over the top, unrealistic, lustful.
There will be a day when I will have a pen name that is only writing smut, because that's where the money seems to be.
I see a lot of those writers out there, and they pump out just a ridiculous amount of books.
But in case you were wondering, Yeti porn has already been done.
Yes, there was a controversy about that a few years ago, if I remember right, about the whole Bigfoot Yeti porn smut thing. Yeah.
Who is the guy? Chuck Tingle. I want to be Chuck Tingle. I want to write books that are titled things like "Dinosaur Goes to the White House and Takes It in the Butt." Like, dude is so random, and it's so much wrong rolled up into one. And you know what? I have life goals now.
Hey, man. We're getting to that magical time where it's time to wrap things up, and that is a high note, in my opinion, to leave this on.
And on that note,
and thank you very much for coming on the show. Before we kind of end the show, why don't you tell everybody where they can check out your stuff?
So you can buy any of my books on any of the major retailers. The two series that I have out right now are the Suburban Zombie High, and the other one is the Children of Nostradamus. You can also find, if you look up the New England horror writers, I have a couple stories and their last 2 years of anthologies. And if you want to come find me, the best place to go do that is on my website, which is Remy Flagg, RemyFlagg.com, and shoot me a message. I always love talking to people.
All right. Hopefully that, I think we've convinced some people to check some stuff out, because it is awesome, and I've read a lot of it, and it's fantastic. So it's, I've enjoyed kind of getting to go on the journey as this stuff has come out and read it. Before we go, though, I have to thank my sponsor, the Maine Cannababes. Their new calendar is coming out, and they just announced in a live signing event calendar release at New Year's Eve. So if you're in Maine and you're listening to this and you want to go meet the Cannababes, buy a calendar and get it autographed and talk to them. That is on December 30th at Green Bear 420. So you can pick up some smoking supplies, and you can meet the Cannababes and get some autographed calendars and swag and stuff. And all the money that they earn from the calendar is going towards worthy charitable causes, which is awesome. But check them out on maincannababes.com. There's a lot of good stuff there. And I'd like to thank all of you wonderful people out there that keep listening to the show, and it's very humbling to see how well the show has been doing and lately, and people that are into it, and I really appreciate it. As always, you can check out my stuff. Go to thomaswashburnjr.com. The links for pretty much everything else are there. I'm on Instagram at Thomas Washburn Jr. I'm on Twitter at TWJAuthor. Facebook at Average Joe's Drive-In Podcast. And, so that's about it. Or find my books on Amazon if you feel like reading some horror. Once again, you have been listening to Average Joe's Drive-In. I am your host, TJ Washburn, and I will see you sexy animals on the flip side.